In the card info screen, you will find a few stats like damage and HP. Those are usually shown because they are essential for the player to understand some interactions. But what about the hidden ones? What the f***? There are a few hidden stats that can affect various things, like how easy is a card pulled by tornado, decide which cards take priority over the other, which changes a lot of interactions, and those same stats can explain why some cards are very easy to push around and some other cards seem to be impossible to push. So I took it upon myself to test everything out, and here's a list of every secret stat in Clash Royale, or at least the ones that I noticed. Secret stat number 1. Weight. Every tornado player knows that there are some troops that you literally cannot pull onto the King Tower, but majority of the time it comes from a trial and error sort of thing and not from understanding why a hog can be pulled easily but a ram rider can't, despite looking and acting extremely similar to the hog rider. And here's the deal. The weight is 1-to-1 tied with the speed of the unit you are pulling with your tornado. For example, the hardest card to pull with a tornado is the golem because of his slow speed. An ice golem, despite being way smaller, is exactly as hard to pull as a golem because weight is based on speed only. Troops with medium speed can't be pulled towards the King Tower, but it usually is very close. In fact, it's very close to the point that if they played a medium speed troop in one of those inner tiles, pulling it to the king becomes possible, and this is something not many players know about. However, it is important to know that it only works on the troops that have melee medium ranged attacks, because those with melee long range attacks, like the prince, will stand very far away from the tower, making it not possible to pull them. Troops with fast speed are significantly easier to pull compared to troops with medium speed that even if they were played on the outer bridge tiles to be as far as possible from the King Tower, it will still work. And obviously if fast troops can always be pulled, then very fast troops are just gonna be way easier than them. This begs the question, what if we somehow mess up with their speed? Ice Wizard slows down the movement speed, so realistically it should make pulling them harder. And Rage, on the other hand, speeds up the troops, so it should make pulling them easier. The reality of this is that pulling a Raged Knight will act just like a regular Knight, as in it almost gets on King Tower but it doesn't. And pulling an inner tile Knight is possible even with an Ice Wizard slow, because the game uses the base speed, not the current speed of the troop. This is literally the exact reason why a Ram Rider is near impossible to pull despite it having a very quick charge. And that's because the charge speed is treated as a temporary buff and not a change in the base stats, so Tornado will use the speed before the charge. Secret stat number 2. Priority. Unlike me playing Sonic Unleashed on an exam night, this game usually has its priorities straight. For the most part. Lightning, for example, prioritizes higher HP troops to get the maximum value, and Royal Chef gives pancakes to the beefier cards, but those are stated in the game. What isn't stated is the tiebreaker system that goes into effect when there are a ton of units with the same HP. Like, why did the Lightning specifically pick these musketeers out of the rest of them? Lightning prioritizes troops that are deployed first, so here in this situation I will be deploying 4 princesses, and the 4th most recently deployed princess will end up being the one surviving. And just to show how it isn't based on their position on the map, here is 4 more princesses in a more randomized order. You don't even need to keep track of them because I'll probably have some number on the screen, but again, princess number 4 survives. The Royal Chef works the exact same way as if you have 2 musketeers deployed. The one that was played first will end up getting the pancake. I would appreciate a sub while I'll tell you why this would be useful in a real game. Normally, most troops would tie when 1v1ing a similar troop, which makes sense because same damage output and same attack speed. However, some cards seem to have different mechanics to where one of them would beat the other. This is literally based on which one is played first, so if I play my fisherman in response to an enemy fisherman, mine will end up losing. Zappies are also one of the few cards that are affected by this interaction. At first I thought this was because of the stun, but it turns out the stuns has nothing to do with this because Electro Dragon is still normal. Another card that gets affected by priority is Evo Snowball, as if I play a Sparky first and then follow with a Giant, the Sparky would go behind him. But if I play them in the opposite order, i.e. a Giant first then a Sparky after, the Giant will be thrown behind instead. Chain attacks will work the same way, as it would go for the troop that you deployed first. However, those don't have a priority for higher HP troops, so the E-Drag will ignore the Musketeer in this case. Secret number 3. Staggering deployment. Every person that has an eye must have noticed that a swarm card drops gradually instead of instantly.
Hey, fuck you!
So I guess it's less of a secret stat and more of a secret effect, because I bet you don't know what it changes. It can be bad in some cases, like Archer deployed on a Cannoneer would normally get only one shot on tower, but if you deploy them into an Ice Spirit to make them move at the exact same time, they will get a second shot on the tower. Staggering is also bad when you are defending, because it delays the troop a bit, which explains why some Evo Bats can heal before the others. Take Minion Horde for example. If I play them directly on a card versus have them already pre-placed, the pre-placed ones will take it out faster because all 6 will attack at the same time instead of having them attack one by one. Recruits being very far apart means they are the ones most affected by this. Against Expo, if you play your recruits to block it and they start slowly spawning from the opposite side of the Expo, they might get a lock on tower. It is a split second kind of interaction, but this is one of the very few ways the Expo player can win this matchup. I will say though, a lot of people don't know, but you have control over where the recruits start spawning. If you want them to spawn left to right, make sure the tile you play the card on is on the left of the arena. And this means if you play them on the right side of the arena, you will get them to start spawning from the right to the left side. Okay, but like, why am I helping recruits players? Despite looking like a bad thing, I think this is very helpful for Swarm in making them anti-prediction. I believe this alone outweighs all the downsides I mentioned earlier and makes it an overall advantage. Plus, with cards like Rascals, the stagger is made in a way that the boy would drop before the girls, so it doesn't matter how close and what position you play them in, the squishy girls will always be safe. Secret stat number 4. Pushability. I don't know if that's a real word. For this we have two main categories. The first being how possible it is to have one of your cards push the other card, because if you don't know, not all cards are the same when it comes to this interaction. And the second one is about how possible it would be to push a card by deploying stuff on top of it, and this one is also not possible with all cards, there are rules to it. Let's start with type 1. From a logical point of view, I think we all agree that if you want to push a troop, you would use a fast troop to push the one that is slower than it. If you disagree, just look at this and maybe consider retaking your physics classes, or consider developing some common sense. I don't know. You have issues. Now, in our real world, a small thing wouldn't be able to push something if it was too heavy, because it needs an insane amount of force to be able to do that. But in Clash Royale, even a stupid tiny Ice Spirit is somehow strong enough to be able to make an effect on the giant's movement speed. But there is a secret stat that determines how strong the pushing effect would be based on the mass of the card, and it is entirely unrelated to the weight one that I showed earlier. When the card you are trying to push isn't moving, then things change, as not all cards would be able to push it. Yo, can one of you all push the other one? I'm trying to promote code Abdod here, like, man, what the heck? Thank you, Mr. Giant. Now people know which creator code to use. You would need a card that is like as heavy or heavier than it. As you can see here, the Skeleton King can push a Royal Giant, and the Battle Ram that failed earlier will be able to push the Hunter when it's not moving, because it's a lighter card than the Royal Giant, so things kind of work out here. I would like to point out that if the card that you are trying to push is very small, some troops might fail at pushing it. The collision of both cards need to align in a way that prevents it from slipping away from each other. Now, when would this be useful? Usually Clone and Giant Skeleton are like the main application of this in a real game. The other stuff like pushing Hunter and Ram Rider are just like way too niche to even try in a real match. Now let's go to the second type. If you play this game, you 100% panic dropped a card when something connected on your tower, I guarantee this. And sometimes it works and pushes troops away, saving you a ton of damage. But some other times it just doesn't work, and the troop keeps attacking the tower as if nothing changed. But have you ever wondered why? It has to do with two things. First one being the range of their card, and the second one is the collision of your own card and how massive it is. Delete the low taper fate comment. You are writing it and I can see you. Cards with melee short range can be pushed by literally anything. There is nothing with a collision that is too small to push them, so it's always a safe bet to go for. The only exception seems to be Boss Bandit if she dashes on tower, because for some reason if she walks towards it, she can be pushed with a small spirit. Cards with melee medium range are unaffected by tiny things like spirits because of their range. You would have to use bigger collision cards like Knight or Ice Golem to push them away. Melee long cards are an interesting case because even bigger collision cards don't work on them. That's if you play the cards right in front of the tower like you usually would. But their bigger range allows you to push them if you move the cards one tile above the usual one. This placement would make even smaller collision cards like spirits push them off, and that's helpful versus things like Prince. Quick side note, bigger collision doesn't mean bigger hitbox. From what I've seen, all the cards have the same hitbox for some reason. Ranged cards can also be pushed off the tower, but their rule is slightly different. Cards with a decimal in their range, like something 0.5, can't be pushed away. Not by small cards, not by bigger cards, you just can't push them off. I guess unless you use something massive like a golem, but it's never worth it. Cards with no decimal can be pushed literally even with a small spirit. But people probably don't talk about this because an ice spirit makes them retarget anyway. Pushing by deploying cards can also be used on your own cards, as you can use it to bypass certain building placements. And while it's mostly popular with balloon, it can work with nearly every single card. You just need the right combo. There is also this trick where you can push a musketeer on the river to snipe a building. Depending on how deep a building is planted, you would need bigger collision cards to achieve that. Oh god, she's walking on water now. And defensively, you can push their card into a misplaced building. Obviously, the bigger the card is, the more collision you would need. You can see this used in a real game by playing buildings far to avoid earthquake and then pushing a hog with a spirit. Secret stat number 5. Sight range. Almost every single card in the game has the exact same sight range. It's basically the range where they detect something other than the tower and start going towards it. The nature of the stats forces it to be greater than or equal to the range of the card, because how would a musketeer hit something that she can't see? And this is exactly why cards like Firecracker, Fisherman and Dart Goblin have larger sight range than usual troops. You can notice that because they walk towards a troop that is not seeing them at all. I believe the default sight range is 6 tiles, which is why you can't kite ranged troops, because they will stop to shoot and the thing will walk out of sight. Cards like Bowler and Hunter have way lower attack range than 6, so you can kite them despite being ranged units. Another type of troops that have different sight range is building targeting ones like Hog Rider. Usually it's much larger to compensate for the fact that it is harder to distract them. Finally, we have Rapid Fire, because those are too small to have their own chapter. Pushback is usually based on the card that is doing the pushback. While Log barely moves things, Snowball shoves them to the other side of the map. And also, troop weight doesn't matter because a heavy balloon will be pushed as much as a small goblin. Some cards have immunity and can't be pushed back entirely, well except for the Log. Number of spawned troops per wave isn't mentioned. I know this is very obvious and can be known by just playing the cards, but for some reason the stat page only shows death spawn, which is an equally obvious stat. The duration between lightning strikes and void strikes isn't mentioned in the stat page, just thought it would be cool if it was written. Slowdown on Evo Firecracker Sparkles is not mentioned anywhere, despite being an actual thing, and I don't get why. Poison has it in its stats, so why can't the Evo Firecracker? Deploy speed on the Royale delivery is nowhere to be seen. Now normally on regular cards, the game doesn't mention deploy timers because it's a standardized 1 second. Expo, Mortar and Golem have 3.5 and 3 second deploy timer, so those are mentioned. But Royale delivery was left out of this for some reason. Evo Dart Goblin's Poison upgrades on Dart 1, Dart 4 and Dart 7. The game for some reason decides that it's not an important enough information to mention. Some of the cards in the game can jump over the river. Not only is this not mentioned anywhere, but also they don't tell you about the healer and the ghost being able to walk on water. Graveyard only spawns skeletons around the edges of the circle, but for some reason the game treats it as if it's fully randomized. Demolisher's lifetime after getting half HP is 10 seconds, but it's not mentioned anywhere. The stat already exists for buildings, so I don't see why it doesn't have it. Soul collecting mechanic used to be Skeleton King exclusive where it got it from every troop. Now with the Evo Witch, she has more specific requirements and it's not mentioned in the stats. Like, who would think that guards would work on that? Like, it just is counterintuitive. Charging speed for Prince and Dark Prince used to be exact same, but it's not anymore. Now it's extremely inconsistent, but from what I've seen, the cheaper cards take longer to charge. Splash radius is an interesting one because most of the ranged cards has a 1.5 tile splash. So Witch, Wizard, Ice Wizard, Baby Dragon all have the same splash. Skeleton Dragons and melee units have different sizes for obvious reasons. I swear if someone starts lecturing me about weight and mass and be like, well, you used those incorrectly, I know, I'm trying to explain things in an easy and simple way, my dudes.